This is the Advancing Veterans' Rights for Access to Psychedelics and Plant Medicines panel. And I'll be reading the biographies of each of the speakers before they go live, and they'll be talking for up to 20 minutes. So first up, we have Jessie Gould. Jessie is a pioneer in psychedelic therapies. As founder and president of the Heroics Hearts Project, he has spearheaded the research and acceptance of ayahuasca therapy programs for military veterans. Jessie has raised over $200,000 in scholarships from donors, including Dr. Bronner's, partnered with the world's leading ayahuasca treatment centers, and is researching psychiatric applications with the University of Colorado Boulder and the University of Georgia. Jessie's mission is to help military veterans struggling with mental trauma and spread awareness of the benefits that ayahuasca therapies offer as an alternative treatment to pharmaceuticals. Jessie has spoken globally about the benefits of psychedelics on mental health and has been recognized as one of the social entrepreneurs to watch for in 2020 by Cause Artist. So one of the technicians wants to bring Jessie up. Let's give our attention to him.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well, staying safe and healthy during these crazy times. Thanks for coming to this chat and joining us in this discussion. And I want to start off first. I'll kind of talk a little bit about the landscape that we're in, what that means for especially our movement with veterans, and then I'll go a little bit over some of the items that Heroic Hearts Project is interested in, and if you have questions about anything specific, we can address that in the Q&A. And so, just even beyond increasing the rights of veterans in terms of access for psychedelics, I and some of the other speakers on this panel, we have the same sort of belief that veterans are very important to the psychedelic movement in general as messengers. They can play a very important role, and we've seen that in the past. And during this time, obviously there's a lot of pain, a lot of sort of chaos. None of us really know what's going on or how to address it. But I think within that, there is this silver lining. What you're seeing in a lot of news reports and just daily discussions is mental health is becoming in the forefront of discussion. The most notable, obviously, a lot of people have brought up concerns about these first responders, the frontline medical people. How are they going to readjust post-COVID? What sort of protocols, what sort of ways can we help them deal with these traumas, these unique events that they're having to struggle through on a daily basis? But then also on a broader level, all of us, we're in this very unique situation. We're sharing it together. We're cooped up in our homes. We're dealing with new stresses, existential stresses, uncertainty, worried about loved ones. And all this are things that we need to address at some point. And I believe a lot of people at this, probably most people at this conference will probably agree that psychedelics can play an important role in that. And so that's why there is this opportunity where people for the first time really on a universal level are taking more note of mental health. And I think if we can build a bridge, if we can connect psychedelics in this movement and the discussions here and other medicinal plants, that can be a very powerful thing. So, I mean, obviously at the beginning of the year, the psychedelic movement had tremendous momentum. Just even in our organization, you could see the changes. And this has definitely taken the wind out of the sails of it. There was a lot of decriminalization movements, a lot of legislation going, and obviously, they aren't necessarily able to do that at the same speed anymore. It's delayed. But as I said, it's provided us some time to think, to readdress the situation. And now we have, these new groups to appeal to. And I think we just need to find ways to access, to, as I mentioned before, build bridges. And that's what I've seen through my experience with working with veterans. There's these groups, when you think about veterans in the psychedelic space, for a lot of people, those two ideas don't necessarily come together. They're different, but it actually has come together very beautifully. When I started, a lot of veterans, it was hard to find veterans. It was very skeptical. They had, the same way I had stigma going into it. But through our work, and as we got close or more inside the veteran communities, as we worked with more notable veterans, social influencer veterans, their stories, their powerful transformations spoke volumes, and it's since rippled through the veteran community. And there is, if you're not aware, within the veteran community, there is a lot of trauma. Unfortunately, the rates of depression, suicide, anxiety are well above the rates of normal population. And it makes sense because us as veterans, we were in these very extreme environments. We were often exposed to a lot of trauma. But then on the other side too, when we come back to civilian life, it's almost a stark contrast from this high speed action adventure movie to corporate America, to a normal day in, day out job without any real mental health transition, without any real signal that this is the new life. And so you see this in a lot of veterans. And that's what we've seen, especially in terms of the research side, that there is this unique opportunity because we can pinpoint some of these various causes a little bit more easily because of this transition. It's trauma, PTSD, all these sort of things. They're not unique to the veteran community at all. But as I said, because of our ability to pinpoint these specific traumas, I think it will, from what I've seen working with the veteran community, is this powerful opportunity to understand a little bit more about what causes PTSD, about what causes potentially depression, and how we can alter that and change that. And so, through our work, that's really what we're trying to do. And that's what we need everybody's help here with. If you're really an advocate of spreading the message, spreading these powerful plants, these healing modalities, now's the time to represent it. If you've been healed yourself, speak honestly to people, to these first responders, bring that connection. I would never say push it. Don't try to proselytize anybody into it, but you can be the ambassadors. And that's what we are trying to do on a daily basis through the veteran community, through the first responders. These are all communities that are very well respected and listened to across society. Since I've started this, it's been remarkable about the types of people that will listen to this message if it comes from a veteran or comes from that source. We've worked with a lot of, especially high-level Navy SEALs, Green Berets, some very intimidating people, and they've had some pretty profound life-saving experiences through ayahuasca, through other psychedelics. And so when they go to the forefront and speak in front of people that would normally never even entertain this discussion, it at least brings them to the table and opens that up. And I truly believe that is the way that we get this to succeed, this movement to expand, to go further than just our own group. And that's, in my mind, the end of the day, to allow this to be a healing modality for more people, to be a tool for those that need it. It's not I don't believe it's for everybody. And I believe that there should be a lot of different options, but at the very least, those that are seeking this should have the ability to pursue it, and they should be able to pursue it in a safe way with the correct protocols, with the correct information, with the correct support. And that's all what we're lacking now. But I think we can make these transitions by working with these communities on a small level. And so if you have questions about that, we're always trying to expand our ambassadors, our network programs. And, as I mentioned before, I think reaching out to these people on the front line they're bravely going into work every single day that are going to need help. I think this is the time to start discussing that. How can we reach out to these communities? How can we make this a powerful cooperative event to get healing to where it's needed the most? And so that's the discussion that I think we should all have and work together, brainstorm on how we can pursue that together, especially now we're all, cooped up in our homes and have, for a lot of us, time to just think and time to reassess our own selves and how we can help others. So as I mentioned, the nonprofit that I have is Heroic Hearts Project. And in the time that we've been operational, we directly connect military veterans to psychedelic-based therapies, mostly ayahuasca. And so we've been very diligent about creating a whole protocol to, one, provide information to those that might be interested, provide the support network in terms of coaching, and then oftentimes financial scholarships to those that have a hard time getting to these retreat centers. And through this, we have been working with coaches, integration coaches, to further those programs, figuring out ways to better connect people, to set people up for success. Because as many of you know, I'm sure, the psychedelic side is just one piece of it. A lot of the work comes in before and afterwards in the integration phase. And it's really on the personal responsibility to make the most out of it, to incorporate these changes in your life and take responsibility. And so that's always this ever-evolving process. Within that, it'll take a lot of us to reassess how we look at trauma, how we look at what therapy is, what defines therapy and mental health treatment versus, a traditional, here's your pill, go home. And I think psychedelics provides a lot of insight, and it will provide a lot of challenges, but opportunity within that. So even just working with veterans, we found that, PTSD is not as simple as you saw something horrible overseas. It's a multifaceted, multi-layered issue that affects each person individually, that can stem from different sort of things. And we need to be aware of that. We need to figure out ways to understand that more. So with that, also some other items that we've been pursuing, as the bio mentioned, we're working with the University of Georgia. We're working with Colorado University in Boulder. And through that, we're doing a combination personality survey before and after ayahuasca therapy. And we're doing the first ever gut microbiome study through Colorado University, using their some of the leading labs analyzing gut microbiome in order to just try to find more information, see if there is some sort of change in a person's microbiome that later translates into personality changes, hormone changes, all that sort of thing. We were in the process, and we still are, once all this clears, to expand that to other biological samples, including blood, urine, saliva, and just trying to track as much information, trying to get as much potential backing besides the obvious, powerful anecdotal stories. So that's sort of the dynamic of what we're about. And as I kind of opened up with it, at the end of the day, I think it's all about messaging. It's all about the stories we tell. The facts and the statistics and whatever comes out of the research is absolutely necessary. It lays that foundation. It gives us the support. It allows us to go to other universities, to politicians. But at the end of the day, the way the message is spread is through story, through emotion. People need to connect to this. People need to think of, their family member possibly getting the benefit out of this. And that's how I think we effectively transition the story. And so, we're always trying to work with veterans and first responders and these other groups that just have these such powerful stories that often put themselves on the front lines of whatever danger, and to see the remarkable transition, their healing through these therapies, especially when they go into it very doubtful, is a very powerful thing. And I've seen that cross all sorts of lines, political, whatever person's viewpoint on drug policy, it causes a lot of these people to question that. And, we're in this weird time where we are very polarized, we are very divided on all sorts of different lines. And through this COVID thing, it seems like there is an opportunity to come together. And I think that can be led by psychedelics. I think it matters less of where you come from, who you are, what your political leaning is. At the end of the day, we all have to deal with these same sort of mental issues, these same sort of struggles on a day-to-day life, some more than others, some in different apparatus. But at the end of the day, we all deserve the ability to heal, to live as healthy as we possibly can. And these are the tools that can bring us there. And so we just have to continue the discussion and figure out ways to push this forward, ways to bridge to other groups that normally disagree with us, and try to find, some sort of unity, because it's just getting more and more crazy if we continue to be divisive. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to ask them. The website is heroicheartsproject.org. We're also on all the social medias. Just look up Heroic Hearts Project if you're interested in learning more or just talking or what have you. Like I said, we have an ambassador program. So for those that are looking to have a more active role in the psychedelic movement but don't know how, that is a potential way that you can join us, build these micro groups that help spread the message, help spread the healing. But yeah, thanks for listening. I look forward to your questions. I look forward to interacting with each of you individually, and see what we can make of this.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessie. I don't know if the text want to pull me back on screen, so I can do the next introduction. So following Jessie's talk, we have Ian Benouis. Ian Benouis, JD, is the General Counsel of the Veterans for Natural Rights, which is a 501c3 dedicated to veteran healing and reintegration. He is a West Point graduate, former Black Hawk helicopter pilot, former U.S. Army officer and combat veteran who participated in Operation Just Cause in the Republic of Panama, the biggest operation in history directed towards the war on drugs. He has been healing himself for over 25 years with natural earth medicines, a spiritual practice, and as a student and practitioner of ethnobotany. Ian has organized and participated in numerous trips with veterans to Mexico, Peru, and other locations for ethnobotanical healing. This work has been captured in documentaries including From Shock to Awe and Soldiers of the Vine. So let's welcome Ian on stage.
Well, all right. 4K, I need some makeup person in my staff. Thanks to Shakruna for having me, and especially for Bia for putting this on and making this whole thing happen virtually after the Corona change. And at the MAPS conference here in Austin, Bia rightfully so wanted more commentary from me on the war machine and how the intersection of psychedelics is affecting that. So I want to be able to address that today and just give a quick background for not everyone who knows me of my story and how I got here, but I'm going to keep it very quick. So I grew up in Hawaii before DARE, before the meth epidemic, before cannabis eradication in the U.S., where it was integrated into the culture, and went to West Point through Blackhawks in the Army. Was down in Panama, and that was really the beginning in Panama of the continuation of the drug war into cannabis eradication in the U.S. And I, fortunately, like I said, missed all that DARE programming. I got out of the Army and went to work for Pfizer as a pharmaceutical rep at the peak of the pharmaceuticals when they were launching the SSRIs, the synthetic opiates, and saw the promise and then eventual, pitfalls that came with that. And went to law school, and in law school is where I spent 3 years doing my, first round of healing, and to be able to be a father and a husband and raise a family. And really then my children were my medicine. And then after about 6 years ago, I met veterans here in Texas for the first time, and opened up all this, second round of healing that I needed to work on for myself, and that I hadn't, been aware that I needed to do at that point. And so that was my impetus to work on myself, and I knew these medicines worked, and to start working with them again, and then of course sharing them with other people that could help. So just like Jessie and Matt, and hopefully Amy can join us, we've all been in this movement together for a number of years. understanding that veterans are the face of change in society around these psychedelics. And the real truth is that the war machine is done. The recruiting machine, which has been turned on since the volunteer army existed, has been paused for the first time ever. And turning it back on is not going to be something that's going to be easy. In 9/11, you had this mass event that captured everyone's attention and was the recruiting piece for the past 19 to 20 years of people signing up to fight. Now, Corona is an example of a worldwide, phenomenon that there's no enemy to fight. It's everywhere. It's the ultimate, terrorist in that way, ultimate adversary. And so we've had systemic damage, both from a morale and a performance and continuity perspective in the military, where you have people who have had 6 deployments and then they've got PTSD and they've got addiction and they've got traumatic brain injury, and you're just losing all that institutional and morale knowledge. So I really see this as a return to how in the past traditional societies, let's look at Native American societies, after the warriors came back from fighting, they would not be immediately integrated back into society. They would not be dumped back into society. They would be segregated, isolated from the community, and they would go through a whole nother set of rites to purify, to clean them, to integrate them back in society. And in modern society, we have lost, abandoned, given up in that process. And that's really what we've all been doing in this movement here together, is building those infrastructures to have that, so that not just veterans, but everyone can have that in society, because we don't have rites of passage into adulthood and we don't have rites of passage out of the military. And a lot of people go in the military to get the rite of passage into adulthood. And now it's the opportunity to build this for all of society. And I don't see a future in the military where regime change and overseas wars are something that we can sustain. And I see a much more, National Guard if we're attacked, and kind of military. And so what I think then now the veterans need to continue to do in the short term is exactly what Jessie said, and what we've all been doing is telling our stories and sharing our cultural and political power as veterans, because we are the ones in the political process that are the least easy to dismiss. We've signed up to defend our Constitution. We've never, people don't give up that vow. We will put our lives on the line. And really, even more than that, the society and the military itself deserves a debrief on what we've been doing over the past 20 years and how successful using the biggest, strongest military in the entire world to achieve our political objectives. It doesn't seem to have, done that, and we're not these days very good at nation building. So what I see is, in my concerns as we shift out of this prohibition model, that we don't go into a whole full-blown medicalization, corporatization model. And veterans are well placed to be those examples. Is we're self-organizing, and it's not about money. And for this work to actually, function, the key isn't a doctor-patient relationship, a patient-therapist relationship. It's having someone else on the medicine path who's your spiritual battle buddy that you can work with through the process. So I found that out. We can open up veterans as deep as they want to be opened up, but without the process to be able to support them, it's really you can put them in a worse state. So I'm very encouraged by the opportunities that are in other countries to be able to do these medicines legally that have indigenous traditions that have been alive for thousands of years. And I know that those systems can teach us, but I also know that if this is going to go mainstream, there's no way that everybody can go down to South America for these kind of treatments. So I think the foremost thing veterans can do besides organize and heal themselves is to help end the war on drugs. And I think the most direct way to do that is through decriminalization initiatives that I know VNR we're very much engaged and interested in, because it's a way that a veteran can get engaged in the healing process and then facilitate the civic engagement immediately at the municipal level, at the city level, at the county level, at the state level, versus the long slog that if Amy can join us, we'll hear that it is in DC trying to change these laws at a federal level. So I see the war machine has networked up the planet and spun off all these life-saving technologies and given us the internet so we can get to the point where we realize that there's no other place we can go and fight that doesn't touch us. So we're living in a networked global world, and we're the first outputs of the war machine to say, okay, this endless war doesn't serve the greater good, and how do we reintegrate ourselves in society, and then by extension show everyone else how to do that in whole. And Jessie started to allude to this, the biggest correlator to obtaining trauma in war is childhood trauma. So we've got people that have childhood trauma, that have traumatic brain injury, and then they're going into the military and getting more of the same, and then coming back and being put on medicines that don't address their challenges and instead put them on a path towards suicide. And I'm fortunate enough to work with people after they've attempted that unsuccessfully and found cannabis and gotten off all the other meds, and then we can start working together on a holistic plan to success. So I look forward to the rest of this discussion and being able to share with everyone else and engage with some of the folks in the audience.
Great, thank you so much. I'll be introducing our next speaker now. So after that wonderful talk from Ian, we've got Matt Kale. Matt Kale is a veteran of the 101st Airborne Division. He's done 2 tours to Afghanistan and 1 medevac from theater. The drugs the doctors put him on for his injuries destroyed his life, and he attempted suicide. In early 2014, he obtained one of the first R&D hemp licenses in the country and has used the full spectrum of cannabinoids to treat himself. Matt then started a nonprofit, Veterans for Natural Rights, a community support association for veterans. The organization lobbies for personal freedom, individual liberties, and natural human rights. In late 2014, he got involved in politics and started pushing the legislature to pass a bill to allow cannabis therapy for PTSD. In 2017, he finally succeeded in pushing SB 17017, allow medical marijuana use for stress disorders. He was also instrumental in passing HB 171313, Civil Asset Forfeiture Reform, HB 191234, Regulated Marijuana Delivery, and HB 191230, Marijuana Hospitality Establishments. Most recently, his efforts helped I-301 decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms in the city of Denver to succeed. Matt has been pushing for the boundaries of the drug wars for years now, exploring cognitive liberty by joining the World for Access to schedule natural medicines for PTSD. So welcome, Matt.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hopefully, yes. My name is Matt Kale. I started Veterans for Natural Rights specifically to change policy in the United States. It started really locally here in Colorado, but quickly spread nationally. And I've journeyed internationally for access to these medicines. I'd love to advocate in any and every country that would like access to psychedelics for mental issues or trauma. Early in 2015, I realized that the veteran voice was important, and it wasn't just wanted in this country, it was actually needed in order to pass certain things. It was originally, I was involved in cannabis legislation. It was the first plant medicine that I came across that really helped with my symptoms. And so I got very heavily involved in the movement. I wanted to speak out about this. And I think that is something that's common to most veterans. You know, we're used to kind of putting in the elbow grease and the hard work and focus that is necessary to bring things to fruition. So I just wanted to start and get to work. And we started advocating for a number of things after that. But the first, as was introduced, was PTSD as a covered condition for cannabis use in Colorado. And it took a few years to get that done, but we finally got it done in 2017. But veterans are important because we speak to both sides of the aisle. To the left side of the aisle, we are America. We come from every single socioeconomic, ethnic, social group background. We come from every state, every city, every rural area, and we can speak to every single one of those people. It doesn't matter whether it's conservative or liberal, because we believe that we can change the world. Everyone who signs up, we think that we can change things simply by the work from our own two hands and sheer force of will, hard work, focus. That's the kind of things that we believe in. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff out there to try to convince us that we can't do that, but turns out they're all wrong. I found that out. I wanted to really test that idea, and can an average Joe actually do something in the halls of Congress, either on a state level or on a federal level? And I found out pretty definitively that an average Joe can. So if you think that you are too small, you're too tiny, you are just a person lost in the sea of humanity, you're wrong. You are important, and you do matter. Your voice matters, your opinion matters, and speak up, use it, and use your vote too, because these things matter. The years after I realized this very basic fundamental truth have only reinforced this idea that we can change the world together if we all work, again, together. I started in cannabis legislation. I added a PTSD to the list of covered conditions, as I said. It was 2017 by the time we got that done. I started advocating in 2014, and it obviously didn't work at first. It was the same old process that everyone had been doing. You send a petition to the executive branch of your government and they deny it, and then you get disappointed for another year afterwards until you can file another. My unique contribution to the effort was to start thinking militarily about this. Everybody is attacking on this one front, this executive front, and filing petition after petition after petition, 6 different petitions over 6 different years. And none of them have been improved. And what I did was start to apply pressure on not just the executive branch, but the judicial branch. I filed a lawsuit against the state. And I also filed a bill in Congress to try to open up the front, multiple fronts, multiple avenues of attack. And eventually this approach won. We won in the legislation in 2017. And now PTSD is a covered condition in Colorado. As soon as I realized, though, that my voice mattered, that I could actually make a difference, then I started, I guess you could say I kind of caught the bug, and I started advocating for all kinds of things. I got into civil asset forfeiture reform. We passed that in 2018, I believe. And there are a lot of other substances on Schedule 1 that are vilified, demonized. It's not just psychedelics. Psychedelics are starting, we're having a psychedelic renaissance right now, and people are starting to see the uses of psychedelics, but there are a lot of other things on Schedule 1 that people use, sometimes misguidedly, because they think it can help them. Things like meth and cocaine and heroin, and people have addiction problems who have had trauma. People who have traumatic instances in their lives need something to take away the memory or somehow help them integrate it into themselves. A lot of these other substances, Schedule 1 substances, are terribly bad for you, whether it's cocaine or methamphetamine or heroin, but people should not be vilified for trying to fix themselves. They're trying. They're desperately trying to just try to survive from one day to the next. And they don't deserve to be othered and made into some kind of monster for simply trying to treat their issues. Their issue is trauma. And trauma is one thing that binds us all together as humans. You know, it's one of those, even the Hindus said that existence is suffering, samsara. And this is something that binds us all together. We're all the same in that. And I think that's one of the things that veterans actually add to the conversation too, because we are humanity. We come from every single socioeconomic background, every ethnic and social group. We come from every city and rural area in every single state. We are America. And if you go to the rest of the world, veterans, we are the world. We are the people who live right next to you. We are the people who have all the same experiences as you, except for the veteran, the military experience. The military experience is really just the cherry on top. As Ian said earlier, childhood trauma is often what really binds us all together. Things that happen to us early on, we take those things in and they become a cornerstone, a rock on which we build our entire identity. And those things that happen to us early on affect us throughout all of life. So even though I started in cannabis legislation, once I realized I could change things, I started going beyond that. Civil asset reform and decriminalization of other Schedule 1 substances. And last year I helped out with some media pieces for the Decriminalized Denver initiative for psilocybin mushrooms. And I was always pleased with the public response. It was amazing how many people came to me and said, hey, listen, you know, I didn't go through what you went through, but let me tell you what happened to me. And a lot of these stories were horrifying, absolutely horrifying. There's no other way to say it. And I found myself saying to them, I haven't been through what you've been through. I wasn't kidnapped or tortured for weeks on end. I saw some things, I did some things, and I am extremely heartbroken and devastated by these things. But what you have been through, in my mind at least, has been far more. And that's when I started to realize is that trauma is the thing that really binds us all together in our humanity. Our humanity is is it's defined by this suffering that happens to us early in life, it happens to us later in life, and it's the one thing we all have in common, every last one of us. But trauma cuts through all barriers. There is no boundary on it. And we all suffer from trauma in some way, shape, or form. But the disempowerment of veterans with trauma and the disempowerment of civilians with trauma, it all happens through the same method, the same means. And that means is by othering these people. Addicts has such a bad connotation to it, and it's ugly. And that's what they want. They want you to see these people as somebody different than you that has nothing in common with you, so that they can be dehumanized and then imprisoned and treated like animals. But our strength comes not through othering and putting boundaries between us. It comes through realizing that we're all the same and that we have similarities, we have commonalities, that we can bridge this gap, and then we can start to work together. Our power comes from realizing that we're all the same. We're connected. We're all one people, one human race. We're bonded in life by this suffering. And through that realization comes compassion, feeling with someone else, compassion, the breakdown, etymology of the word. And once you can feel with another person, you can work with another person in order to get the things done that you need to get done to change the world. The military teaches us this experience in spades. We are all broken down and told that we are equally worthless. And that's the military's way of saying that we are also equally of worth, and that we need to work together because we are all the same. So we get this intense boot camp of humanity. And if you watch enough people die or hold them while they're dying, you realize that you're just like them and you're going to die just the same. There's no difference between you or them. We all bleed the same red blood. We're one. We are the same. We're human beings. We all deserve respect. And we should all love one another. Doing work with Toad and 5-MeO actually has helped me solidify these lessons, because it's pretty much an instant ego death, and it reaffirms all these ideas that we're all going to die, every last one of us. And the thing that we are bonded together through is not just our deaths and our suffering, it's our life and our joys. And those are the things we need to really hold on to and hang on to and elevate, lift up. Those are the things that will carry us through life. It's not the suffering. The suffering defines those beautiful moments that really bring us all together. And I got to thank Anahi Ochoa down in Mexico, of the Yaqui Native American tribe in Sonora. I spoke down there at the convention and the World Bufo Alvarius Congress, and she came up to me afterwards. She couldn't speak a lick of English, but I understood every single word she was saying. Tears were pouring down her face. And when we were finally able to communicate, she said that maybe you're right. Maybe veterans are the voice that might change the world. You've been through so much, and you're calling attention to the fact that we have too. The civilians of this nation, the civilians of every nation have been through so much, and they deserve recognition too. There's a guy out in San Francisco at a talk I was with Ian, actually, and he stood up and said, man, after watching these things, I feel bad sometimes, and I feel really bad about feeling bad because I haven't been through the same things you have. And I had to tell him in front of 1,000 people that, listen, man, your pain is as valid as every single other person's on earth. And don't ever let anyone tell you any different. Not a veteran, not a police officer, not a first responder, not a government official. Don't let anyone tell you your pain is any less than anyone else's. It's just as important to you. And that's why it's important to all of us. Because we need all of us in order to change things here in this world. We need to work together in order to make things happen. And this is the fundamental lesson of the military that can really help us all start to change things on a fundamental level, because we can work together to change the systems that are controlling us and keeping us locked in a box, oppressed, away from everyone else, thinking we're alone and that nobody's ever going to help us. And it's not true. None of it's true. There's a lot of people out here that will help you try to change the world. So get involved. Speak up. Use your voice. Use your hands. Use your actions. Use your body. Use everything you possibly can. Every single bargaining chip that you have, put it on the table and try to change the system that we are living in. That's the only thing that's going to get this whole thing changed for us. So I started out with ayahuasca in 2016 when I started, I recorded a movie called From Shock to Awe. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, you can see it on Google Play. You can see it on Amazon Prime. You can see it on iTunes. There's a number of different other platforms you can see it on, but it is about the journey from trauma to healing through the use of psychedelics, primarily ayahuasca. I started my work with ayahuasca. I quickly moved on to iboga, toad, 5-MeO, mushrooms, peyote, and eventually to other things too, even some synthetics like ketamine therapy. They each have their place, and none of them should be stigmatized, othered, or put into some other place where nobody can get to them. These things all need to be available to every single one of us. And I think that it's not really just the veteran voice that will get that done. It's all of us together. But we realize veterans are natural leaders, and that love us or hate us, sometimes we can just get things done because of our mindset. So please, if you have an interest in this topic, you have an interest in actually making a change in the world and making these things more available, more acceptable to more people, then speak up, use your voice, and donate to some of these organizations. Heroic Hearts is an amazing group that is doing incredible things for veterans that I know these people are getting real healing through Heroic Hearts. They're sending people down to South America and other places to experience these things firsthand. And people are coming back with amazing stories of healing. Veterans for Natural Rights, you can visit us at veteransfornaturalrights.org, and you can donate there. You can voice your support. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual speaking up and actually taking a step towards action. But I'm nearing my time, and I will yield the floor to Emma. And thank you very much.
Okay. I think Amy is going to be joining us by audio. Yeah, we've got a thumbs up there. So I'm going to read Amy's bio, and hopefully everything will go off without a hitch. I don't see her up on the screen yet, but I think she'll be up soon. Thank you so much, Matt. That was really, really moving, by the way. Wow. Okay, so Amy Rising has excelled in legislative consulting for the past 9 years. Her passion to help fellow veterans heal is what led her to start advocating for veterans' healthcare in 2010. As a legislative consultant, Amy has delivered pro-cannabis votes in both U.S. houses and has helped guide Senate leadership's evolution on cannabis as it relates to public health and veterans' healthcare. As an independent legislative consultant, Amy has been a successful advocate for veterans' healthcare. In a conference with the Delaware State Senate about VA healthcare, she successfully advocated for PTSD to be added to the state medical cannabis bill that was signed into law in 2011. In 2014, after successfully lobbying and testifying in front of the New York State Senate, the New York medical cannabis bill was signed into law. Collectively, Amy has helped provide access to care to 1 million veterans in the states of New York and Delaware. Amy served in the Air Force from 2001 until 2005. She was stationed at the 15th OWS at TACC headquarters as a meteorologist from 2002 to 2005. She volunteers her time as legislative coordinator for Weed for Warriors, and she holds a BS and an MPA from Park University. So welcome, Amy. Is Amy here? Hey, Amy, are you here? Can you give us a sign? Hi there. Let me talk to the tech for just a sec. Okay, so it looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with getting Amy onto the screen. So in the interim, I'm going to ask one of the questions that came up for Jessie, and then we'll see if Amy comes up at any point. So the most upvoted question for Jessie comes from Kaylin Thomas, and Kaylin asked, have you found a network of VA mental health providers to help you coordinate education about psychedelic-assisted therapies and research?
Hey, Kellen. Yeah, I mean, we're always working on that in the background, and there's definitely a lot of people who worked with the VA that's reached out to us with frustrations or with hopes of the future. MAPS is currently partnered with somebody high level in the VA to push forward the MDMA therapy. The hard part always when dealing with the VA or any government organization, especially the VA, is it's just a slow moving giant. It's almost always the last to respond and to pick up whatever new therapy treatment options. It is particularly hard with this discussion because it has to follow federal law. And so as long as these substances remain Schedule 1, they're almost prohibited from even touching it. You can really see sort of this story saga play out with respect to cannabis, where obviously cannabis is still Schedule 1. A lot of veterans use it. If you look at the VA in Canada, they allow, to some extent, they reimburse and allow veterans to use cannabis up there. But the U.S. has always been delayed because of this scheduling. So the VA's hands are tied almost in that weird aspect. And the whole system, which is what we're trying to go against, it's this big catch-22 where in order to change it from Schedule 1, you have to have sufficient research showing that it doesn't have addictive qualities or that it has medical benefit. But it's very difficult, if not nearly impossible, to study these things while it is Schedule 1, just in terms of the cost, in terms of the prohibitive laws around it. And then you add on the DA often just won't even approve licenses, all that sort of stuff, as you see with cannabis again. So it's difficult. And there are people within the VA, the people work there. They are wonderful people. They're great doctors. They're great representatives. And I know a lot of them want to help at the end of the day. And so there is this growing support. It tends to be underground at this point because some can come out, but not all of them. And so at this point, from our standpoint, Heroic Hearts, we want to kind of do an outside, like, hearts and minds, for lack of a better term, campaign that brings these veteran stories to the forefront, puts pressure on politicians, puts pressure on the system, and shows that, and have people question why, if these are so powerful and so effective, and why are veterans seeking them on their own, is this not incorporated in the system? And I believe that by putting more pressure on that system through these stories until the time that they're ready to change or there's laws passing, I think that's one of the most effective means we have, putting pressure through the stories, through the direct engagement.
Thank you. I'm going to check in. Is Amy still getting patched in as far as we know? Okay. So while we're still waiting on Amy, I'm going to pose a question actually to Ian. Okay. We're still waiting on Amy. So Ian, Greg Kearns asks, I'd love to hear your thoughts about a hybrid model where veterans partner with therapists in the U.S., allowing for them to support each other and build community, while also benefiting from the expertise of the therapist to support them in the healing process as well. So if you have any thoughts on that, maybe you could share some insights, Ian?
Yeah, thanks. I think that's an excellent question, Greg. And, hybrid model, combination model, for sure, the first person that needs to be able to fulfill that role is what I've been calling a spiritual battle buddy, is someone who's a veteran who has experience correlated to that veteran themselves and has experience with the medicine, so that veteran can trust that person. And then once they have that one person that they can work with, then it would be perfect to have a model where they could also access a myriad of other resources along with counseling and EMDR, CBT, equine therapy, flotation tanks, EMDR, yoga, acupuncture, now all these sound healing, light healing, all these newer technological methods. So I think that veterans are going to be the one, kind of like in the military when you're testing out all this equipment for destruction. We're going to be some of the leading edge people testing all these equipments and technologies for application to everyone for the benefits of mental health. So I don't see any of it as an either or. I'm not anti-medical process. I just want to see us have the opportunity to have the maximum choices ourselves, in the process. The only way I think to get there is ending the drug war. So we'll be able to talk about all these things and access full discussions when that happens. So.
I'm sorry?
Oh, thank you so much, Ian. It sounds like we have Amy up on. Amy, are you there? I see.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Amy? Sorry, guys. Amy, I'm going to just ask you one more time. If you're there, can you give us an audio signal? So I see that the Trakrina Institute is up on the stage, but the mic is muted. Maybe we would have to unmute that mic. Okay, if we're still waiting on Amy, then I'm going to go to another question again for. Okay, it says that Amy is live.
Can you guys hear me?
Okay, great. We're on. Amy, I've already read your bio, so you can feel free just to jump in and get started.
Can you hear me at all?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Yay. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. So essentially, I've been working for the past 9 years on medical cannabis for veterans. Late last year, Chairman Graham and his staff, along with the DEA, asked me to participate in writing the new fentanyl analog. And so that is what essentially became my first federal piece of legislation signed by a president that was signed on February 6th. And my intention for that language was to cut all of the federal research, red tape, for Schedule 1 drugs, which I effectively did. And so in that, we were not only thinking about cannabis, but also psychedelics. And it harkens back to Matt's point before about Schedule 1 drugs needing to be freer, if you will, so that they can actually be used as medicine. And so now we're in the process on the federal level to get an appropriation situation that's bipartisan, that can be supported both in the House and the Senate. And so I think that, we're close, but we're still a little ways off. I know that the state stuff is very important, and that people who are interested in having psychedelic research and or psychedelic therapy need to talk to their state representatives and also call their U.S. senators and congressmen. And so where we have been at with the cannabis situation and why I feel so confident moving on with psychedelics is because we're getting ready to wrap up cannabis essentially on the medical level. We have significant movement on the medical front in the Senate and the House. I know that the project I've been working on with Chairman Grassley for the last few years has been very well received this year. And I know that Republicans are looking at alternative therapies with fresh eyes because of the opiate epidemic, but also because of the culture change. And so that, that's kind of where we're at now. Veterans are on the forefront of this fight, just like we were on the forefront of the cannabis fight. Dennis Kern was a vet. And so, we need help on all fronts, from civilians. Everybody has a part to play. We need civic engagement on not only this kind of healthcare, but all alternative healthcare. And I think that this pandemic is really illuminating a lot of the problems and the flaws in the American health system. And I think that we're going to see a lot of changes. So I'm really excited about the opportunities that are coming for not just vets, but all Americans. And so I'm really excited about the possibilities. I do want to say that I'm very nervous or I have trepidation that some states that are seen more as democratic or liberal will want to go for a more liberal policy when it comes to psychedelics. And I think that we should be a little bit conservative. And I think it's really important for states to get together, because I think that we don't want people, especially Republicans, to think this is a hippie alternative or anything like that. Like, cannabis has been seen in the past. And so I think that's why it's so important for us to constantly outline the medical use and how we know it to have healing properties. And that's why, research and different forays into medical advancement are so important. But that's pretty much where we're at. We're excited. We're moving forward, and I can take questions.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Okay. So the way that we're going to do questions actually is in a collaborative Q&A where I will be posing questions directly to one speaker at a time. So if you guys have specific questions for Amy, it helps me out if you ask them in the question box and you write out that they're for Amy specifically, and then she'll get to answer like a couple of them all in one go. But we're going to go through each individual speaker just one at a time. And if you could, again, just put this in the ask a question box, that will help me organize them. Okay, so I'm seeing a couple of questions for Amy. I think the way that I will organize the Q&A, starting at this point, is to pose questions to Matt, just because we've already had some questions for Ian and Jessie. Is that okay, or would we need to pull Matt on stage and maybe have him go later? I'm not sure, because I see. Okay, so it looks like we'd have to bring Matt up on stage. So I'm going to start actually with the questions for Amy then, because she's still on stage. Amy, can you hear me? Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. Looks like Amy is...
Yeah.
Amy, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yep. Okay, so I'm going to...
I am.
Hi there, okay. So Greg Occurrent asks Amy, are you familiar with the Forum for Collaborative Research, and do you think there's room for them to support work on the advocacy side with the FDA and others in DC?
I am vaguely familiar with that. However, because psilocybin and all of these other medicines are still Schedule 1, they're still under DEA jurisdiction. And so the FDA really only has jurisdiction over MDMA and the studies they're doing right now, and I have nothing to do with that.
Okay, thanks for that. So I'm going to move on to the question from Roxanne Hallisey.
If that answers your question, because the DEA still has jurisdiction.
Okay. Speakers and attendees, I think if you have follow-ups, maybe you can continue to ask them or look for the speaker's contact information and always continue the conversation with them one-on-one. I'm going to move on to the question for Amy from Roxanne Hallisey, which is, how do psychedelic researchers ensure that studies make their way to appropriate legislative and political bodies to expand knowledge and understanding while still protecting veteran and military members who are seeking healing outside of clinical avenues? So it's about the researchers having their studies get into the legislature and into the correct political bodies.
Okay. Number one is always, who is the research being done by? First and foremost, is the university, and if the university, what's their relationship like with their legislators? Because it's really up to the researchers to get it in the hands of the appropriate people, which would be civic engagement, which is like, have the where's the research live? Are they, politically engaged? Do they talk to their senator? Do they talk to their congressman? This is really important. I know a lot of researchers have hired lobbyists and law firms in the past to try to bolster their information, or if they were going to be able to do something else, like do different things. Like take Tuesday, for example. She has been working with different entities, and I know that they had taken the DEA to court. I meet with the DEA regularly, and I think her and I talk very often, and we are coming to the center of the circle from different angles. And so that's really, how politically active do you want to be as a researcher? That is really what it boils down to.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question for Amy, because after that, we would actually have to pull somebody else. We'd have to pull Matt back onto the stage. So I'm going to ask one more question for Amy, and then we're going to go to some of the other questions for the other speakers. So this one is from Angie Leek, and Angie says, I would like to hear more about psychedelics can help heal the vets' family systems. The trauma impacts them and is also traumatic and disruptive for their families. There seems to be great hope for using these medicines for healing the family members and systems as well.
I mean, I'm not going to say no, I agree to that, but I also think it's doing, you have to do your due diligence, and it has to be responsible, right? And so I think that at what age is responsible? And, that has something to come into it, because for us, we're looking at a situation where we're going to allow research studies, right? We're going to fund research studies. The government's going to give people money, but we're going to say, these psychedelics are, medicine, and we're going to do this. But you are also going to have to be under care of a therapist, and I think both, they're very important. They go hand in hand. So I think the family therapy thing is a great idea, but I'm not a doctor, and I don't pretend to be. So I would also, think about what is the responsibility factor in that, and what is the age threshold that this is okay to heal as a family.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just going to remind the attendees again as well that while I don't want to speak on behalf of any speaker, it may be possible to continue the conversation through alternative channels, just because we have a lot of questions coming up and we have to do some technical work with pulling people on and off screen. So I'm going to ask the technicians to pull Matt on, because we haven't had a chance to pose a question to him yet. And then I'll ask him something and then go on to some of the other questions, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, Matt, are you there? I think there is actually a little bit of latency. So actually, while we get Matt on the stage, I'm going to ask a question that's pretty general and that came up at the beginning of our panel. This is from Michael Hodge. As a disabled veteran on a fixed income, how can I be my own advocate for obtaining plant-based medicine for a reasonable cost without needing to rely on veteran-focused organizations for guidance? I'm an individual with individual needs dealing with my state, which is Ohio, and I would like more questions answered. I do need assistance with getting help and healing. However, I want and need to have more self-agency as well, despite mental health signs and symptoms. So that one, I think, could be posed to different people in the group right now. If someone wants to jump in.
I can provide sort of a quick on our side. It's tricky, especially on this platform, to recommend it because obviously they are still illegal, and so there's the legal ramifications of suggesting local kind of sources. There's always sort of groups and supportive communities. Obviously, there's certain places it's a growing sort of thing, like Colorado and Oakland, where that might be more feasible. At the very least, I recommend if you do pursue this, be with somebody that knows what they're doing in terms of a sitter, in terms of some sort of expertise, just because it can be very powerful and obviously very helpful. But if you're not familiar with it or you don't have a lot of experience, then it can it's just more beneficial to have somebody there that can guide it, that can keep you in, that can keep you from a freak out or keep you from just feeling out of control. And so be responsible, but in terms of like organizations, it's just very hard for us to recommend anything because we are Veterans for Natural Rights and Heroic Hearts Project are both 501c3s. So we both have to toe the legal line here in the U.S. Unfortunately, that's the state of the situation. So hopefully in the future we would be able to give more recommendations and empower the individuals. But yeah, that's kind of my view on it.
Thank you, Jessie. I'm going to move on to a question specifically for Matt, just because we haven't heard from him yet. Caitlin Riley asks, what was your iboga experience like? What did the plant tell you, and what lessons did you learn?
Oh, that is a complicated question. Let me tell you. My iboga experience was probably one of the most difficult of my entire life. It is literally about 36 hours from baseline to baseline. You start on Friday and you're really not right until Sunday. There is an intense period, maybe 12-hour peak or so during that first night and during the next morning. It has different qualities than many of the other psychedelics. It's what many pharmacologists call a dirty drug, in which it attaches to multiple different receptors. And so it has a very interesting presentation. Many times you are faced with friends and family who might have passed and who may tell you very pertinent, interesting, and important messages for you during your time in life now and during the future. And I wasn't currently addicted to any substances when I did it. I did it purely for spiritual exploration. But what I found in the months following my experience was that I started to reevaluate my behavioral addictions. And by that, I mean my addictions to things that aren't chemical at all. They are rote responses that we learn over life to deal with certain situations. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be things happening in your relationship. It could be things happening in your life or your work. You have these set programs, these little subroutines that go on in your mind that are literally addictions, because at one point in time, these subroutines, they actually helped you do something important, but eventually they become maladaptive and they start getting in the way of your experience of life instead of helping your experience of life. And you have to reevaluate your relationship to these things and determine if you really need them or not anymore. One of the big things that came up actually after my Iboga experience was my use of social media and Facebook and Instagram and all of the things that we're all addicted to here in Western society. It's all seems like good, clean fun, but guess what? It's addictiveness. It's addiction. And we pursue the dopaminergic surges from the little clicks and the little likes, just as we do the dopaminergic surges from any chemical on the face of planet Earth. Behavioral addictions are no different than chemical addictions. And in many ways, we have to treat them the same too. The behavioral addictions can be a little bit more insidious because we don't think of them as addictions because they're not chemicals. They're not something we're eating or drinking or putting into our body. They're something we do. And a lot of the time they get in the way of real, actual, personal interconnectedness and connection. And really, I think that's what this coronavirus has really done for me, is that it has cut off a lot of my public life and has made me focus more so on my own personal life and actual physical connection, emotional connection with other human beings in real time here in front of my face. And having done an extensive period of psychedelic therapy beforehand, I understand now that one of my most important and influential connections is to my family. And I've really refocused my entire life around them, around homeschooling my kids, around building a relationship with them, something that can mean more than the simple, average, everyday relationship between child and father. I want to be there for them in so many more ways. So Iboga has really, God, it revolutionized everything. And that weekend, I took Iboga on Friday, and Ian was there actually with me. I took Iboga on Friday, and I took Toad on Sunday. And so the two experiences together really comprised an absolute whole of reintegration, reconstruction, and rebirth, honestly.
Thank you so much, Matt. This makes me want to try Iboga one day if the circumstances ever line up. It sounds really transformative. Thank you.
It's very difficult, though. I will warn everyone. It's very, very difficult. It's extremely disorienting, very lots of nausea, ataxia. You can't really move very well. It's just know what you're getting into beforehand and be prepared.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm quite there for it yet. I feel like I'll know at the right point in my life, maybe when I'm a little older. Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to pose a question now specifically to Ian, and then maybe move on to a question for Jessie and or one of the more general questions. So Ian, Jessie Hudson asks, considering indigenous peoples in the Amazon use ayahuasca to, among other things, improve their hunting skills, how do you think ayahuasca and other psychedelics can make people better soldiers, not just help them reintegrate into society? So I don't know if you have thoughts on that or could speak to that. Oh, Ian, I can't hear you. Can other people hear him?
There he is.
There.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Ian. Did you get the question?
Yes, I did. So the question was, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the question was using these medicines in historical indigenous context for hunting, what could that correlate to being a better soldier in war or otherwise? Yes. But beyond that, that maybe just argues to the point about these medicines as positive influences on our evolution and development. So definitely they can increase our awareness, increase your peripheral vision, your tracking of different objects, your integration of the different parts of your body and brain, and make you a better human being. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to assume any particular ideological sort of take on the military or what it means to be a soldier as I'm taking these questions and dispersing them. So just to throw that out there. My next question, it's from Kai River Blevins, and it was posed during Jessie's talk, but I think it's one that possibly anybody could speak to. And Kai asks, how are LGBTQ plus veterans, women veterans, veterans with substance use disorders, and veterans who experience military sexual assault being incorporated in the advocacy strategy and healing process?
I can speak to a little bit of that. I have come into contact with a number of LGBT veterans, people with military sexual trauma, both men and women, in my advocacy. And, a lot of them are simply, they're not to the point in their healing where they can actually come out and speak in public. But I encourage them to every single time. Their voices matter just as much as ours. We have experienced different sorts of trauma, but their pain means no less than ours. They are just as important in this fight. And in fact, even more important because they bring a spotlight to issues that are normally swept under the rug. And a lot of people don't want to talk about them, don't want to look at them. These are ugly, ugly things that happen in our culture, in our nation, in our society. And people don't like to think about these things. And it's better if we bring them up to their attention and make sure everyone knows about this. This is a thing. This is something that actually happens, and it happens to people that you probably know. So the fact that people with addiction, veterans coming out of service with addiction, especially with combat deployments, it's almost a cliche at this point how much that has become an issue. And whether it's to pills or to street drugs, it doesn't really matter. It's really the same beast that we're talking about. We're just talking about addiction to things, addiction to behaviors, addiction to chemicals, addiction to all sorts of stuff. I like to replace the addiction to pills or chemicals or behaviors really to an addiction to life. Because the great thing about life is that you can always increase the dose and there's never any danger. So I try to get people back into the experience of living life and doing the simple, mundane things, connecting with their partner, with their children, going on nature hikes, doing whatever is necessary to get your mind out of what is pinning you down and get your mind into the things that will lift you up.
Does anybody else want to speak to that? Since that was a general question. Thank you, Matt, for your answer. Just before I move along.
I'll have a brief add-on, and I agree with Matt. You know, it's the same sort of practice in terms of advocacy. You know, by sharing stories, you never know who your individual story is going to hit. And, you know, it's one of those, like, even if you change one life, even if you connect to somebody else. And so the best way is to share all these stories, you know. If you are suffering from trauma, and I've seen this all the time with military, is that they thought, a lot of people tend to think their trauma is unique, or they're experiencing it in a unique way. And so when they hear other people that have very similar experiences and they're actually sharing it, it inspires them to share it and to also look at themselves and find a way to heal. And then also just to add on too, that's what we need to look more into. I think in the past we tend to just put these blanket terms of, like, you're depressed or you have PTSD, but they can come from all sorts of different traumas, and people have different backgrounds. And so we need to understand more where these traumas coming from, where this person's coming from, to properly group them, to properly treat them. So when we organize retreats with veterans, we take extra caution to understand what the veterans are suffering from, where they're coming from. So for instance, you know, we would never put, unless in most circumstances, we wouldn't put victims of sexual trauma in the military surrounded by a bunch of other, if it's a female, maybe other male veterans at an ayahuasca retreat, because that could put them in this uncomfortable state. And so you have to work with a person, know where they're coming from, know what you're dealing with to set them up for success.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. I'm going to pose another question that came up during Jessie's talk, but I'm pretty sure it could really be answered by any of you. So this is from Roxanne Hallisey. She says to Jessie, you mentioned working closely with veterans and associated groups to bring this type of treatment. Can you please discuss key ways that we can break down barriers to care within the veteran community, i.e. Intramilitary stigma, the I can do it on my own mentality, and the stigma around psychedelics with veterans and their agencies like the VA, like from the JER generation or among older veterans. So if anyone wants to jump in, and then I'll give everyone a chance to talk if they would like to respond to that question of stigma and other barriers.
Hey, Roxanne, good to hear from you. I'll just go again real quick, because I think it's an extension of the previous question. You know, it really is bringing it to light. Light is what heals a lot of things, and bringing out the discussion, bringing the conversation, brings in other people to it. So that's what breaks down the stigma. And I've seen that time and time again. You know, I've had a few veterans, one notably, you know, he was a 20-year Ranger veteran, and you know, had 15 deployments under his belt, and, you know, just comes off, like, from first appearance, like the stereotypical sort of veteran, and you'd never expect him to speak on the subject. But just through his story, and similar guys like him have brought a tremendous amount of people to our door through our application process, because it is that, this person, which I think is rock hard and isn't affected by anybody, he's sharing his journey, he's sharing his emotions. He is being vulnerable, and in that finding strength. And so that inspires other people. And, you know, especially in the military world, it is a very tight knit, but it's also, they tend to only trust other military voices. And so that's why it's so important. But then on the other point too, that's why it's important for other groups to come out and speak, and other traumas to come out and speak, similar to the sexual trauma. You know, that's a very hard thing to talk about for people that were victims of that. But when they do, it brings power to a lot of other people that are suffering the same way.
Yeah, I got to tack on to that. I actually recently had a guy in my own unit come forward to me and reveal some military sexual trauma. And it's not just women, it is men. It goes across the aisle. There is no separation here. Sexual trauma is something that is remarkably common. It is horrifyingly common amongst human beings in general, honestly. And it's even worse in systems of control and domination, such as the military and other authoritarian organizations, churches, athletic programs, things like that. These things, they deserve their day in the light. And just the fact that he was willing to come forward to me and tell me about this experience that he had was huge. And I think, honestly, the more people that do come forward with their own stories of trauma, no matter how different they are from anybody else's, this is going to be what moves our entire movement forward, because it links us all together. We all have these traumas. We have some kind of trauma, whatever it may be. Something has hurt us in the past and has changed our relationship with the world. It has removed our trust. And these things need to be brought to light, and they need to be shared, and people need to feel like they're not alone, because our strength is together. It's not separate. As much as, yes, absolutely, you can get through some of these things with the help of psychedelics alone, but you know what? It's much better with people. If you have a spiritual battle buddy, like Ian said, if you have a spiritual battle buddy that can help you through these experiences, you will go much further, much faster, and you will gain much more control over your life.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Thanks so much, guys. So this is posed directly to Ian Benouis from Wendy Feng, who identifies themselves as a VA psychiatrist in California. And Wendy says, I sometimes feel hopeless as someone working within the VA. And yet within our fragmented medical system in the US, it's often the most accessible medical care system. Do you have any advice for those working in the system and are aware of deeper healing, how they can connect vets with this treatment? I've been currently awaiting legalization and FDA approval, but wonder if a faster path is possible.
Does anybody else want to take a stab? I'll take a stab first. I've recently actually tried to engage the VA about this. There's no hope for things that are not FDA approved, honestly. Right now, the VA is bound by the federal system. They are bound by the Schedule I definitions. And unfortunately, right now, the only things that are not Schedule I is, well, it's like ketamine. Ketamine is about the only psychedelic, and it's only marginally a psychedelic. It's more dissociative psychedelic than it is anything. But there's a place here in Colorado. It's a clinic called Innate Path, and I have partnered with them to. I took a pilot program of 6 different veterans through their process, and it took about 6 months. And they gave us a little bit of extra therapy on the end of it. They do both cannabis and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So you actually go through psychotherapy while under the influence of these substances, and they help you bring out a lot of somatic sensations that otherwise are suppressed, and these somatic sensations can often lead to psychedelic revelations, honestly. And I think that the path is there. I know I just recently got a referral from TRICARE West, which is the VA insurance system. I just got a referral from TRICARE West to start doing therapy at Innate Path. And this is a revolutionary thing, because I don't think anybody has ever really gotten any kind of psychedelic therapy, even marginal psychedelic therapy, from the VA. But This is something I'm pursuing right now. I've not yet actually gotten the VA to pay for a session, but I'm this close. And let me tell you, it's on the way. This is not far from actual practice. So I think that there's a lot of optimism to be had here. We haven't seen a lot of psychedelic therapy in the VA so far, but if I'm able to actually get a number of vets to be able to pay for their psychedelic therapy through the VA, this will change everything.
All right. Well, we are just at 1:40 right now, and I'm sorry, 1:40. I'm on Eastern Standard Time, so I guess that's 10:40 for you folks on the West Coast. That means that we're at time for this panel. Seems like there's still probably a lot to say, and again, I don't want to speak off of our speakers, but I'm sure that they would welcome communication through other channels. Thank you so much to everybody for participating, and especially to our speakers. Again, that was Jessie Gould, Ian Benouis, Matt Kale, and Amy Rising, who joined us over audio. And I encourage you guys to check out the links. I'll post them again in the chat, and to use the alternative channels like the Dolores Park meetup and the breakout rooms and other things, just to keep the conversation going. So again, thanks so much to all of the speakers and all the attendees. We look forward to doing more of this work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.